Thank you all for the opportunity to come and provide, I was asked to provide an update on TNDC developments here in the neighborhood. And as you know, we've been here a long time. We own a number of properties and we have a number of projects in development right now that I wanted to give you an update about. So the first one is Eddie and Taylor, which I know at least one member of the audience is very interested in, does not love the design. However, we are proceeding with that development. It includes 113 units of family housing, and we have now secured all of our financing and are moving forward towards a construction start that is projected for sometime between April and June of next year. There is a parking lot at the site, and we will be working with that parking lot operator to relocate to another location. Another subject that might be of interest to this group, TNDC's original vision for that site was to include a ground floor grocery store. We were hoping for something like a Safeway. We had to downsize the development, and we have about 5,000 or 5,500 square feet of retail now. So we are still looking to provide some kind of healthy food related use in that space. And we are working with a food consultant and a work group to help us define our ideal uses for that space and reach out to those users. So I think certainly from this audience here now or in the future, if you guys have any thoughts or recommendations around that, would be most welcome. Now is a good time for us to be receiving input. Yes.
Hi. What happened to the original plan that the space would be large enough to accommodate a large store, which we desperately need? What happened?
Well, there were two challenges. One is that we were able to accommodate about 12,000 square feet on the first level. Given the soil, we couldn't put parking below grade. It would be really prohibitive because of the condition of the soil. And then putting parking above would have taken out a unit of housing that's also quite expensive. So we ran into challenges with like a Safeway or traditional grocery store. That footprint was fairly small for a store, and then no parking is like something they can't really get their minds around.
No, I understand.
I happened to be at a OCI commission meeting the other day where I heard something interesting. It's not a done deal, but apparently Trader Joe's is looking at a site on 4th or 5th between Market and Mission, which I think could be great for the neighborhood. I don't think it's anywhere near a done deal though. Yeah. And apparently Whole Foods is thinking about coming into that new development that's on Market, which, you know, that's a high price point. So I don't know how helpful that is ultimately to the neighborhood.
Yeah, but now I understand about your challenges, the soil and the
Right. So we have been working with the corner stores to try to, us and DPH and a broad coalition, probably folks in this room are part of that, to try to work with the businesses who are already here to encourage them to have healthier offerings. And so we're looking to somehow expand on that and bring some kind of healthy, affordable food use to Eddie and Taylor. Yes.
Has anyone consulted with Rainbow Grocery? There are several stores of that type. One is Other Avenues out on 43rd, 44th, 45th Avenue in Judah.
Okay.
Other Avenues, Rainbow Grocery. These are on the model of a collective or so they would be a way that people in the neighborhood could be working.
Right, like a worker-owned
cooperative, collective,
right.
that kind of structure.
Yes, I appreciate the suggestion. I know that we did a lot of research, and I know we reached out to Rainbow back in like 2007 or 2008 when we were first doing this work, and now we're restarting that. So I will bring that suggestion to the work group. Yes.
So how many low-income disabled people are allowed to live there, and if they have an income of say $12,000 a year out of 300 units you have there? How many? And also because this Tenderloin has the highest density of disabled people, and to bring in just families is going to displace a lot of people because the rents are going to go up. Because San Francisco has a huge amount of space.
First question, that was the answer to the first question.
So Eddie and Taylor will have 113 units, to be clear, 113. It will serve families in a range of unit sizes from studios, 1, 2s, and 3-bedroom apartments. 30 of the units are going to serve formerly homeless families who are going to be referred through the human services agencies. Those families may or may not have a member with a disability, but if they earn $12,000 a year, they will be able to afford to live there because the city provides an operating subsidy to cover the difference between what they can pay in rent and the cost to operate the building. In addition to those 30, we will have 5 additional units that will be targeted for households where an adult member is living with a developmental disability or is exiting a long-term care institution. So trying to address some issues where some people are institutionalized or staying in hospitals because there's nowhere for them to exit to. So then the balance of the units, which is about 78 units, are going to have a scheduled rent. So there will be residents who live there will need to have a minimum income, and those rents are targeted to a family. Like if a family of 4 would have to have an income of about $50,000 a year to qualify, that would be the upper limit. And so they would probably need to earn at least 30 or 35 in order to be able to afford to pay the rent.
So we're actually shutting disabled people out. That's basically it. Okay, thank you.
Well, I just, on the grocery store, I don't remember the name, but in the Mission District, it's either on the corner of 19th or 18th in Mission.
Yeah, Dorey.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's another one that has come to our attention, and I know one of our, another nonprofit, Mission Housing, has some relationships with the folks at that grocery. I think it's a good suggestion, and that's an example of a grocery that serves, they have food that serves, is demanded by a variety of different ethnicities.
Yeah.
And, folks who don't identify as being particularly ethnic also shop there. So I think it's a good example.
It was too.
Yeah.
Mission Economic Development, they may be connected too, and they may be able to help them if they're interested.
Going off-site, we work with people to, as much as possible, take volunteers to do the off-site rooms. 350 Ellis is 96.
Could you first that one, could you tell how long it's going to take for the
Yes, so for 430 Turk, we started construction last November, and we plan to complete no later than this December. So those units will be completely renovated, and whatever vacancies are there will be filled by the end of this year.
I have a couple of questions.
No.
I have one. Now, I've been in the building for 30 years. It really used to be a precinct for elections. Are you going to maintain the space that was supposed to be there for the community rooms? Is that going to be still community rooms, or are you going to change it into units?
It will remain a community room. So I'm glad you mentioned this. So 430 Turk is actually a structure that has the first 2 levels, is the entry for the apartments on the ground floor, and then the balance of the first floor and all of the second floor was administrative offices for the housing authority. On the ground floor, they also had a commission room, which they let the building and other members of the community use. So the plan now is the building was actually condominiumized, so TNDC owns the residential portion and the ground floor residential entry portion, and the housing authority has retained the office portion, and they may move their headquarters back to there. That's not finally determined, but that's their current plan. They want to keep that option open. So in the design of the rehab, there was a lot of negotiation around the ground floor space, and it was recognized that it was important to maintain the tenant's historic ability to use the commission room as a community space. So there is, the area associated with the housing has been expanded to include a community room just for the housing that no one has to borrow from the housing authority, and to have more offices for more staff. So we will have a more significant management presence and resident services presence with TNDC owning and operating the building than was there with the housing authority. We are now providing property management, TNDC itself. The tenant services were being provided by Northern California Presbyterian Homes and Services, and we chose to keep that service provider in place. So TNDC does provide tenant services, and our usual preference is to provide management and services, but in this case, we we decided to work with the existing tenant service provider because the residents already have relationships with that provider, and there's already a lot of other disruption happening in their lives with new management and construction, so we chose to work with that provider. And we are already working with that provider at our 990 Polk development, which is at the edge of the Tenderloin, and is also a senior building. So our management team knows how to work with their services team. Does that answer your question?
And so what's the timeline for the 350 accounts?
So 350 Ellis, the schedule.
Excuse me, before you go on to that, could I ask you to clarify, you said something about commonization of some of those units?
I'm glad you clarified, or asked me to clarify. So we create a condominium, but it's just a 2-unit condominium.
Oh, I
So
see.
one condominium is all of the residential,
I
and the
see.
other condominium is the,
So what are they
commercial.
like tenants in common? How do you do that legally? It's like, how many?
It's like- it's what's called a
88 units?
no. So there's only 2 condominium units. It's what's called a commercial condo.
Oh,
So there aren't like 89 individual condos because we have no, like, zero intention of ever selling them.
so it's a commercial condo, part
It's
of
a
it is the
commercial-
ground floor and the other is.
Right, so basically, it's the first 2 floors are basically belong to the housing authority, and the upper floors basically belong to a limited partnership that TNDC controls.
So
And then there's easements, because,
So where are the 2 condos? First 2 floors or?
yeah, so the condominium just means that there's one entity that owns a portion of the building, and the financing encumbers that, and then
So
there's
which
another.
floors is that on?
So the half of the first floor and all of the second floor belongs to the housing authority.
So where's the condo?
Well, there's just, that's what I'm trying to
Okay,
tell
so-
you. The
so-
condo is, like,
The
draw a
housing
line.
authority is the housing.
Yes,
Ah.
yes.
It's a business, not
Okay,
a
I just wanted to make
residential.
sure.
Yeah.
not residential.
Yeah, the owner of that is the housing authority. Are there any more questions about 432?
Yeah, well, you mentioned how long it's gonna take, so, how many people will be displaced or going on, are you doing floors at a time, or are you,
We're doing floors at a time. We're doing 2 floors at a time.
okay.
And so, what we did is in the first phase, I actually don't know the exact numbers, I could follow up with you, but some people moved from 430 Turk to Rosa Parks or in with family members, but there were very few. What we did was we worked with the housing authority to hold units vacant, so that there are a number of vacancies already in the building. And so for the most part, what's happening is that people are moving within the building. So one piece of feedback we heard, so for the first phase, 430 Turk, which is already under construction, what we've done is we've consolidated the vacancies on 1 or 2 floors, and we set those units up. We call them housekeeping units or hotel units. So we bought furnishings for those units. And so the tenants that are relocating, we're taking all their stuff and moving it into storage, and then they're like staying in a furnished apartment. And then when they move back to the unit, we'll bring their stuff back. We got feedback from tenants that are in phase 2 that some people would prefer to take all their furnishings from their unit to the temporary unit and then back. So for phase 2, we are offering that. For phase 1, it was kind of already done, and we actually didn't really get pushback about that. But in response to concerns raised by people living in phase 2, particularly in Clementina Towers, which is in Soma, but that's another one that we're working on. We adapted our relocation plan.
So again, this is specifically senior and disabled, and it's gonna maintain that status on the building? Or is that gonna change?
Yeah, huh?
It will stay. There was a lot of
And what do
discussion.
you define as senior? Always a good question.
These are HUD financed buildings, so HUD's definition of senior is 62 and over. The state's definition is if we had financing that was only from the state, it would be 55 and over. But these have federal funds, so it's 62 and over.
But if people disabled,
It can
doesn't
be of
matter
any
the
age. It can be of any age.
Just want to make that clear because.
Yes. And so more or less across the ones in our portfolio, about 1/3 of the units are occupied by folks with disabilities, and about 2/3 are senior.
And I guess the question I was originally going to say is, are you building to the code of the state or the city when you do the rehabs?
we are building to city road. So these are rehabs. So you guys may be familiar with the Mayor's Office of Disability. So particularly those of you that are advocates for the disabled. So with new construction, you have to follow state and city code, and there's, everything's really good, right? With rehab, it's more challenging because you're dealing with existing structures and your elevators may be only this big in the shaft and the corridors may be only so wide. So there was a lot of, negotiation and meeting with the Mayor's Office of Disability to resolve how much accessibility improvements would be made. But I will say that in the scoping of the rehabs for ourselves and also for the city, which is a huge partner in this, the number one goals were seismic and accessibility. And so one of the things for us that's been important is trying to get as much kind of unit improvements as we can, because we recognize that for a lot of people living in these buildings, if there's an earthquake and they live, they'll appreciate that, and if they themselves or their friends have have a need for accessibility, they'll appreciate that. But for many people, they'll have had the inconvenience of being displaced, and it might not feel like the building is actually that different, even though we pour all this money into it. So we are, what we've done is we've gone unit by unit and evaluated particularly kitchens and bathrooms to see where we need to upgrade fixtures and flooring and appliances. Yes.
Okay, people in wheelchairs and short people. Okay, I live across the street and it's privately owned, so it's not an issue with you guys.
Right.
But I want to ask if there's an analogous kind of thing when we got everything changed and rehabbed and new flooring, everything. They gave us cabinets that you need to be 6 feet tall to use. I mean, I feel like this is kind of a non-starter when you can't get to your kitchen cabinets.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I have to confess I'm not familiar enough with the details of the design to know how high those numbers are, but I can certainly
It was
take
like
that comment back.
they were built for their, my daughter and my granddaughter, they're all tall people.
Right.
But I'm saying a lot of us are short or, otherwise, otherwise challenged.
Because that also happened at the rehab of the Alexander. They put the wash machines on top of each other, and the seniors, people could not reach the top ones, and they didn't get. They're just trying to cram them all in there, but they didn't understand this is a disability. This is incorrectly done. Yeah. And so all he did was put one that was accessible on the ground. So you should have done maybe multiple ones on the ground floor to make them accessible ones. So it's somebody kind of needs to do almost a walkthrough to make sure it's being done correctly.
I definitely hear you, and I think we have as a as a nonprofit industry community have tended to do the stackers to save space. But I hear what you're saying. I don't actually know what the plan is in these buildings, but I will take a look, and if there's an opportunity, it's probably too late at 430 Turf, but there might be an opportunity.
And of course, my pet peeve has always been, because we only need to deal with this at the grand openings that I may attend, I go, well, how much does the tenant have to pay for laundry, payphone, and all the other things? That they take them all out, the payphones, do you have to pay more for the any other additional things, and where does the money go? Does the money go to the tenants association? Does it go to the activities, or does it go to management? And you'd be surprised at the answers. So each building seems to have a different answer, but technically, particularly with the HUD building, there should be funds being somehow figured in for activities versus just going to management.
Right, so I can answer that for the HUD building. So and you're right, the HUD buildings do have special rules, and one of the things that TNDC has been, as a company, ideally we would like for, we'd like to fold, well, ideally, generic is doesn't sound very positive, but we'd ideally like to have one experience for everyone living in our buildings and not some rules for these folks and some rules for those works. So that said, in our regular buildings, the laundry vending income, we do try to keep the rates as low as possible, and then that income does come to support the property's operations. For the RAD building, so 430 Turk and 350 Ellis, it is a legacy that will continue with the change in ownership, that the laundry and the vending income does go to the tenant association. And so there is a big, everything is happening sort of on a big citywide conversation scale around exactly the mechanics of that. And I'm not remembering all the numbers exactly, but I think in addition to the laundry and vending income going to the tenant associations, there's also a mandatory payment. I think it might be in two pieces, like 10 and 15 or 10 and 25, but there's some amounts that are basically part of our operating budget that we contribute to. I think a portion goes to the on-site tenant association, and then a portion goes to the citywide tenant associations, and then there's some drama that's way bigger than TNDC around the citywide tenant association. So there's a little bit of like stuff in limbo right now about who to send the checks to, and like who's supposed to.
So
like right now they've asked TNDC to babysit how that money is used, which we don't want to do.
What about this? Is there interest on the security deposits? Just that's the other one has always been a pet peeve down here.
Oh, there should be. I don't know why there wouldn't be.
Well, there's none in any of the TNDC buildings.
Huh.
See, it's the problem when new management comes over, and at one point there was, then there isn't, and then when they rewrite the leases, they take it out. So I'm concerned about that when there should be interest to give it back to the tenants on their security deposits on a yearly basis. That money can actually go back to the tenants association. And again, you have the ability to, every time you start a new lease, which is yearly, you can make those changes, so you don't have to, and it could be, I'll advocate for all the buildings at this point.
Okay.
They should be, because you have now creating all these additional tenant associations for your TNDC buildings.
Right.
And I don't know how they're funded per se, but the thing is, these are the demands that tenants should be asking for, and for some reason we're taking away for whatever reasons, and maybe they're not aware that they should be asking, and they're not being given them.
Okay.
As far as, because how can you give to a tenants association if there's no recognition that it even exists? And who's controlling the banks, or how is there any control over it? Is it self-sufficient? Well, how can you call there's a tenant association not even self-sufficient?
Right.
I tried to incorporate at the Alexander the tenants association there, and the tenants couldn't get around the issue of incorporation. It wasn't a social club. It had to function as a 501c3. Big difference between when you incorporate versus a social club.
Right. Right. So in the operations side, I don't actually
No,
but I can take your comment back.
Yeah.
And
But
then-
it's part of when you're restarting management and all that. How does the tenants' role as on the new management company
Right.
and all that?
And that's coming up on the RAD projects, because the tenant associations aren't 501c3s, and it can be hard to establish a new 501c3, and so I think that it's like, do we really need to require them to? And then if we don't, like, what's the accountability? So I think, anyway, I'll just leave it. It's a can of worms that probably.
Sorry
I
to
appreciate the
bombard you
inputs.
with issues, but these are the issues that I hear
No,
all the time.
I appreciate having a real conversation rather than, I don't need to come here to talk at you, so. I
Okay, so
appreciate
next
it.
one on the agenda, I didn't want to.
Okay, yeah,
Since we don't have another speaker.
Yeah, well, you've been very generous with your
He
time.
hasn't done 350
350
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, there's other.
Okay, so 350, sure. So 350 Ellis, a lot of the issues are the same as what we've just discussed. It's simpler in that there is only one use of that building, which is senior and disabled housing. It has 96 units in it. We are working on permitting now, so it's going through the Mayor's Office of Disability Review right now. And the plan is to start construction in the fall. The city is hoping for the closings to happen in August or September. We are guessing, it's possible that will slide into November again, just because it's very complicated, all of the whole undertaking. The special thing about this project for us, I'm not sure how much it will affect you as community members, is that we are partnering on that development with Glide Community Housing as a joint venture. They were interested in being involved in that building because it is 2 doors down from their church. And as you're probably aware,
Shut up.
they already own 3 other affordable housing developments in the neighborhood that serve families and single individuals. And on that building, Glide Community Housing provides social services and resident services itself at its 3 buildings and to the broader community. So Glide Community Housing is going to be the service provider at 350 Ellis. So that is different from what I said about the other 430 Turk and the other buildings where we're keeping the existing provider, Northern California Presbyterian Homes and Services, in place. And Glide has been, really good to work with in the buildings that they own. They've developed a real sense of what they think their residents need, and they have really helped us advocate with the city. A little bit to your earlier question or point about 430 Turk. 350 Ellis, if any of you have been in that building, when you walk in, there's basically like a security desk in a big room, and the washer dryers were on some other floor. And so basically we are doing a small expansion of that building into the parking lot in the back. So we'll have a community room, we'll bring the washer dryers down to the ground floor, we'll have more offices again for management and services.
Who owns the parking lot? Who owns the parking lot?
It's owned, right now it's owned by the housing authority, it's behind the building.
Okay. How about to the side? Is there also on the side, between your?
I don't
side?
know